This video shows what's involved in preparing for a solo concerto performance. In this case, I'm performing Tchaikovsky's Rococo variations for cello and orchestra, though I'll play it on the electric guitar. Rococo isn't strictly a concerto, which has 3 movements. Rather, it's a theme with 7 variations that runs about 20 minutes. But it's still a major piece for soloist and orchestra, so preparing for a public performance is the same as preparing a concerto. My friends told me if I'm playing this on electric guitar, don't be shy about sounding like a guitar. I agree, though I'll also honor the intent and cello tradition of this piece. But I don't want to offend sensitive ears either, so I'm avoiding guitar tones that are raucous and shrill. The electric guitar has a wide range of sounds, so I bought this Digitech effects box to have different sounds for each variation. I should also mention that my friend, recording engineer Peter Hodgson, also helped me to hone some of these sounds on the Digitech. But here are some of the different sounds I've picked. There are nearly 3,000 notes to memorize. When playing from memory, you don't think about each note as you play. The memorization must be deeper. Just as you don't consciously think about the musical intervals or words when singing Happy Birthday, notes and fingerings on an instrument must be automatic. However, you do need to think about every note and how you'll play them when first approaching a new piece. When learning a difficult passage, it's important to play as slowly as needed to hit all the notes and not gloss over the tricky parts. Speed and accuracy will come over time and with patience. And I've had to practice some of the more tricky parts very slowly, and you do it over and over, literally 100, 200 times, and eventually the speed and accuracy comes. One of the fairly tricky ones is Variation 1. For most of my adult life, I played mainly pop music on the guitar, which doesn't require reading music. I can read chord names and play them in real time, but I don't read notes fluently unless they're simple and slow. As explained in my music theory video, when sight-reading music, you read the notes on the page and map them to your fingers in the instrument locations in real time. Guitars read the treble clef, but cellos use 3 different clefs, so I have to deal with that as well. I can sight-read music on the cello, but a cello is tuned differently than a guitar, so that actually makes reading music more difficult for me now. When I see a low F in the cello music, the instinct is to put my finger on the 5th fret of the lowest string, which is where an F is on the cello. But on the guitar, it's at the 1st fret. The cello is tuned in fifths, and the lowest string is the C string. So these notes bring you up to an F. Now on a guitar, the lowest string is an E, which is a little higher than the low C string on a cello. So the F note, the same note that's up here on the cello, is here on the guitar. Intervals from one string to the next are also different. The same finger on adjacent strings of a cello are a musical 5th apart, but with a guitar, the intervals are a 4th. So playing each instrument requires a different mindset. Now the guitar and the cello both have a D string right here. And the first position is an E note. And then the next string over at the same position is a B note on the A string. And on a guitar, there's a D string. So this is an E note, just like on a cello. But the next note over is an A, not a B. In the 1960s and 70s, I played lead guitar in pop bands and could play pretty much anything on the radio, but I've played only occasionally for the past 35 years. I'm now practicing several hours every day, and after 3 months, my chops are mostly back, but there's still work to be done. Fortunately, I have 8 months until the concert. Most concertos consist mainly of melodies, and often scale fragments and arpeggios. But this piece has a lot of noodling and complex note patterns, which are more difficult to memorize. A pattern might play 3 times in a row, but one of them is slightly different. So you have to remember, play this pattern, then do it again a whole step higher, then go up another whole step, but this time the 5th note is sharp instead of natural, and so forth. There's a lot of that in the Rococo variations. I'm now 65 years old, so aging and memory are a concern. I managed to learn the entire piece in 3 months, working a few hours every day, and I don't seem to have many brain farts, so I'm optimistic. But memorizing a major work like this is not just about learning note patterns. It helps to know the names of the notes, the underlying chords, and how the notes relate to the chord the orchestra is currently playing. In the third variation, which is in the key of C, mostly this piece is in the key of A, but the third variation is in the key of C. And the first note is the 5th of the chord. It's a G. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the same with the main theme, which is in the key of A. Also the first note is the 5th. You also need to know what the orchestra is playing and how the timing of your notes fits with theirs, especially when the orchestra stops and starts between the soloist's notes and phrases. Playing out of sync with the orchestra during a performance would be very embarrassing. Besides normal practicing, I also play along with the fabulous Music -1 orchestra recording you're hearing. It's a lot more fun to play with a backing track, and this avoids surprises on the first night of rehearsal. But playing to a fixed backing is itself a challenge. Classical music like Rococo, in the Romantic style, doesn't follow a strict tempo, so you need to know how your notes mesh with the orchestra and not play faster or slower than the recording. Thankfully, in a performance, the soloist sets the tempo. The conductor follows me, and the orchestra follows the conductor. Another challenge when preparing a piece like this is varying the playing styles to keep the music interesting. Often a melody will be played more than once, and good players use different techniques and different tone colors for variety. Likewise, you shouldn't pick every single note, which sounds boring. There's a lot of art to playing, and not just on the guitar, on the violin, on any instrument. There's a lot of different ways to play the same notes. Some of them are kind of boring and kind of stupid sounding. A beginner might play this part of the opening theme like this. Where a more polished method would be along the lines of this. Where you add a little vibrato and you slide from one note to another, rather than just. Notes on a guitar can be picked, slid into, hammered on, pulled off, and vibrated a little or a lot or not at all. There's a cadenza, which is a miniature solo in the 5th variation that I'm playing like this. As opposed to picking every note. Use a little finesse. The The same notes can be played on different strings or picked at different places along the string to vary the tone from thin to full sounding. One of the things I'm doing at the end of the main theme is picking very close to the bridge to get a very trebly sound, and then picking farther away from the bridge to get a full sound. And that's a nice contrast. Extended trills that last for a while are difficult on an electric guitar unless you have a very fuzzy sound with a lot of distortion, because a guitar just makes a plink sound and then the note dies out. On the cello, you have the bow that keeps the string vibrating. So I have, some effects on this box to help with the trills a little bit. There's one variation that's almost entirely trills. You got to really push it hard to make those notes continue to sound. Also, as explained in my music theory video, violins and cellos have anchor points that help you navigate the neck without looking. But an electric guitar neck is much longer, so you really do need to watch when moving more than a few frets away. These black markers also help. But I don't want to look like a doofus when I perform, so I'm also practicing playing without constantly looking at my fingers. But you do have to look sometimes, which is one reason to memorize the notes. You can't look at the music and your fingers at the same time. Also, it's simply expected that a soloist will play from memory rather than read music. I'm trying to be as true to the original music as possible, but some things that are easy on the cello can't be done at all on a guitar, and vice versa. The cello has a greater range, covering notes both lower and much higher than a guitar can play. So I had to adapt the music in a few places to play what's possible and practical and stylistically appropriate to the electric guitar. This is not unprecedented. Arrangers do this all the time, such as when adapting a violin sonata to the trombone or piccolo. Because the cello plays notes that go lower than the guitar, a couple places I had to just play an octave higher. I have some other tricks that I'll save for the concert, but one is there's a figure that plays. So by playing the open E string at the same time as the higher one, it gives the impression of a lower note. And the same thing applies at very high notes. The highest you can play on a guitar is here, and that's a C sharp, and some guitars have a couple more frets. But even if I used a slide, and that was something I had considered, a slide is for playing blues, you could go all the way up to here, but the problem is the pickup is here. So the string vibration over here wouldn't get picked up. So really, that's a practical limit, is a C sharp on this particular guitar. So there's one figure that plays an A arpeggio, and it keeps going, and it goes higher and higher and higher. On a cello, you can play as high as you want. You can even go past the fingerboard. If you press the string pretty firmly, again, that bow will keep the string vibrating, even if it's past the fingerboard. So I'm just playing some harmonics instead. Another limitation with the electric guitar is dynamics. Playing both loudly and softly is an important part of classical music. With a clean sound, or only slight distortion, you can control the volume by how hard you pluck the string. But a fuzzy guitar tone doesn't respond to playing intensity that way. My Digitech effects box has a foot pedal that can control the volume, and I'll probably use that in a few places. The concert will be in January 2015, so I still have plenty of time to practice. I hired a professional videographer to record my performance, and I'll post a video for my friends who are unable to attend in person. Well, thanks for watching and wish me luck.